You Booked It, episode 105. Hey, entertainers and performers of the world. I'm your host, Dane Reese, and welcome to You Booked It, where I chat with inspiring entertainment professionals 7 days a week. By digging into their journey, we're going to discover everything you need to do to have a successful entertainment career. You know, because training usually skips that part about how to actually make your skills work for you in the real world. Fellow entertainers, my drive here at You Booked It is to share the inspiring and incredible journeys of successful entertainment professionals. We're here to support your journey. So go to youbookeditpodcast.com and join the You Booked It email community, where we dig deep into truly actionable things you can be doing right now to book that next audition, submission, or gig. If you enjoy this free podcast, please show your support and search for You Booked It on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app, where you can subscribe so you don't miss an episode, leave a rating, and review. And now, let's do this. All right, let's get started. I am excited to introduce my guest today, Austin Koo. Are you ready for this, Austin?
Sure.
All right, Austin is an award-winning New York City actor who recently appeared in the star-studded Stephen Sondheim 90th birthday celebration, Take Me to the World. New York City and off-Broadway credits include principal roles in David Henry Hwang's new musical Soft Power at the Public Theater and John Doyle's revival of Pacific Overtures at Classic Stage Company. He has performed internationally and regionally with Soft Power, Chinglish, Miss Saigon, The King and I, and more. He has also been a featured performer at Carnegie Hall and the Boston Pops. Awards include Stage Scene LA, Dean Goodman, and Wise Awards, plus nominations for Barrymore, Broadway World, and Ernie Awards. Film and TV credits include Detective Chinatown 2, Sleeping with Other People, Billions, Bull, Homeland, Shades of Blue, Sneaky Pete, Younger, and more. He also received his training from the Boston Conservatory. Austin, that is a quick intro of who you are and what you've done, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself, fill in the gaps, and a little bit more about what you do as a professional in the entertainment industry?
Sure. Yeah, that's the professional resume lowdown. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, born and raised. Went to school at a couple different places and ended up at the Boston Conservatory for musical theater, and then came to New York. I am an actor performer. I suppose I would call myself primarily an actor. I do theater, TV, and film. Having gone to musical theater school, I also do musicals, and I think a lot of performers in New York. I also do a lot of other little things like commercials and print modeling, and a kind of random thing that I do is hand modeling, which I fell into, which are all sort of things which fill out the bills, as it were.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, the hand modeling industry is something I don't know anything about, but once I discovered that it was a thing, then you start paying attention to all these different ads. You're like, oh my gosh, there's so much hand modeling in this planet.
Yeah. Like a lot of technology stuff, a lot of food stuff, jewelry things. A lot of times they don't necessarily have a face. They just have hands, or they have a face, but they also have hands for the close-ups of the product, holding the product.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, somehow I fell into that because I apparently have nice hands.
Well, amazing. Good for you. And let's move on to this next section. And Austin, look, I am a sucker for a good quote. What is your favorite quote you'd like to share with everyone?
My favorite quote is one I came across in a book from Martha Graham.
Mm-hmm.
You may have heard of it. The quote is, "No artist is pleased. There is no satisfaction whatever at any time. There is only a queer, divine dissatisfaction, a blessed unrest that keeps us marching and makes us more alive than the others."
You nailed it. Yes. That's so true. And I have heard that one before, and it's such a great quote. Can you expand on that a little bit, on how you've applied that or how it's worked its way into your life and your career?
Yeah, I think part of being a creative person is always searching for more things and discovering new things. And I always try to, with each show that I do, each role that I do, learn something, try to improve, learn new things, learn new skills. So yeah, I take it to mean that, as far as not resting on your laurels, just always trying to challenge yourself and learn new things and do new things.
Yeah, not resting on your laurels, the constant growth, right, that we always
Hmm.
have. And I think us as artists tend to do that much more frequently than the muggles of the world. But it's so true. That's what keeps us young and energetic and full of life, I think, as industry as a whole. Because if you're working, I find from people that I know, working the regular 9 to 5 gigs that you just got to do and you're paying the bills and that's fine and that's what you want to do for life, cool. But a lot of people tend to have a little bit less life in them, it seems. And I think a lot of that is because you just get into the pattern and the routine of things, whereas our industry forces us in a lot of ways to always be adapting, always reshaping and rethinking how we can present ourselves and what is our new skill set or how do we improve on the skills that we already have. We're always growing.
Yeah, I think a lot of the nature of our job, especially when you're involved in theater, the gigs are often short and then you're auditioning, interviewing for the next one.
Mm,
Episodic TV, unless you're on like a long running series or something. Even if you're a movie actor, you're doing one movie and then going on to a different movie. It's a different group of people, a different story, a different character. So we learn to try different things and explore different things each time.
yeah, I think it's one of the best parts about being an artist, being an actor. And let's move on to this next section here. And Austin, of course, you are an entertainer. I'm an entertainer, and I think that you'd agree that this industry can be one of the most subjective, brutally honest, personally emotional industries in existence. And you know as well as I that in order to create and have a successful career in this industry like you're having now, takes a lot of dedication and hard work. And while, yeah, there is an outrageous amount of fun and excitement doing what we do, there are also our fair share of obstacles, challenges, and failures we experience and we have to move forward through. So tell us, what is one key challenge, obstacle, or failure you've experienced in your career, and how did you come out the other side better because of it?
I mentioned before in my intro, I went to school at a few different places. And that was because it took me a little bit of a roundabout journey to get to this career of being a performer, because I came from a very traditional Asian family, and arts was not something that was very encouraged by my family or my culture. And so some of the schooling that I went to, I started off as pre-med in college, and then I went to law school and I became a lawyer. These are like hidden things of my background that I don't talk about that much because
Wow.
they're not that relevant these days to what I'm doing now.
Right.
But that was a life that I had before coming back to performing, which is something I always loved doing growing up, but it was always relegated to a hobby, like something you do on the side, but not as a career because it's not practical.
Right.
But all those things, being a lawyer and working a 9 to 5 job, but doing something that I wasn't really in love with, was an obstacle that I think I came out on the other side better because of it, because having that life is what gave me the internal strength to say, this is not what I want to be doing with my life. And this is not what brings me happiness, and what led me to go back to grad school for theater, which is what I always wanted to do to begin with, and strike out that way, not strike out like baseball, 3 strikes you're out, but forge ahead with doing what I wanted to do.
Yeah, that's so good. And you said that you discovered what you don't want, and that's just as important as figuring out what our passions are. And it's just the reverse engineering side of it of, okay, I
Mhm.
don't want this, but, and if you know that for sure, I think in a lot of ways, that is almost a stronger feeling and a stronger internal knowledge to help move yourself and propel yourself forward into what you truly want.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because now I have friends in the business who grew up as child actors and have never done anything else. And some of them especially during this time of quarantine, are having burnout or reconsidering, what they've done with their lives. And, oh, maybe I want to go back and explore something that I never got a chance to do because all I've done my whole life is be a Broadway kid and then
Right.
doing shows as an adult. Whereas I already had the reverse, and I already know that's not really what I want to do. So I'm like, I know I can forge ahead with this and have this be my focus.
Oh, and to have that as your focus is such great insight, to know that you know that and you're confident in that and you can say it with 100%. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let's move on to a time that I like to call your spotlight moment. That one moment in time you realized, yes, I am going to be an entertainer for a living. Or maybe it was, yes, this is what I need to be doing as an entertainer. Tell us about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do have a favorite moment in theater, if that qualifies for this.
Absolutely.
Which is, it's a bit of a circular story, but when I was in my last year of grad school, I came to New York and I saw a show on Broadway called Slava's Snow Show, which was a really cool sort of interactive show in the style of Blue Man Group, where there's, audience participation and big goings on in the theater that involve the audience. And at the end of the show, spoiler alert, all this like fake snow blows out into the audience and blankets the whole audience with snow. And then the show ends. Then all the people in the audience, of course, start playing in the snow and making snowballs with this fake snow and throwing them at each other. And also there's these big bouncy inflatable balls that were part of the last act of the show that were thrown out into the audience at the end of the show. And everyone in the audience is just like playing like a kid again. And I remember going to that show and thinking, oh, this is amazing. This is so cool. All these adults and kids and everything are all just playing in the audience of this show after it's over. And then everyone's in the aisles and whatever doing these things. And I looked out to the side of me, and in the middle of the house is Slava, the guy who created it and starred in it, who's like a clown or whatever, a trained clown. And he's literally sitting in the middle of the orchestra house, like perched on the back of a chair, just like sitting there, just watching what he created.
Yeah.
So that's the first part of the story. Sorry, it's a little long.
No, it's great.
The second part of the story, and I remember that, and the next year or so, I had the opportunity to play Dr. Frankenfurter in a production of the Rocky Horror Show, which was really cool at the Hangar Theater. And at the end of that show, we had a dance party. We had a DJ set up in like the booth. And at the end of the show, the DJ would start playing, and then all the cast would go out to the audience and bring the audience on stage. And we just had like a rave dance party, and everyone, had their bags with the toilet paper and the things that you have for an interactive Rocky Horror Show. And people would be like throwing the things and playing and dancing. And I had that Slava moment where we brought all the audience onto the stage and people were throwing things and playing and the music and the lights were down. And I went out into the audience seats and I sat in the middle of the house and watched as Dr. Frankenfurter, like, this is what I created here in this theater. And that was like my moment of, that was my moment.
That is so cool. That is so cool. That is something that I love about theater, and how it can just transport people into different states, and you can make really uptight people suddenly playing, throwing snowballs. Did you see Fuerza Bruta? Have you seen that show?
I did, yes.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
Love that show. So good. I saw it in New York City when they were in Union Square. I don't know if they're still there or not.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
And then they brought a production. It called it something slightly different. I can't remember what it was, the name, but it was in Vegas. But it didn't last very long. It was a very short run, and I don't know if that was intentional or if it was a financial thing. But got to see it there, and they had purpose built this giant tent to put that show on. It was, again, so amazing. And it's raining and pouring with water, and everyone is just dancing and having fun after this amazing experience. I think shows like that are one in a million, and they're so great. I love that you had that experience.
Mm-hmm.
And let's piggyback on that real quick, and let's talk about your number one booked it moment. Walk us through that day, the auditions and callbacks, if they happen to be a part of it. What was going on in your life? And what about that moment makes it your favorite booked it moment?
Sure. Yeah, I have a thing for circular stories, I suppose, and callbacks in life, fate, as it were. The one that comes to mind is when I booked the John Doyle's revival of Pacific Overtures off Broadway
All
a
right.
couple years ago. And that was a circular moment for me because so I grew up playing violin and doing theater. And when I saw John Doyle's productions of Company and Sweeney Todd, I was like, wow, these are actors and instrumentalists doing them together on stage. And I thought that's so amazing. I hope that one day I'll get to do one of these kinds of productions, work with this man. And I remember I wrote a letter or an email somehow to him through either his, agent or the Broadway company or whatever, and got something back from him where he was like, "Oh, congratulations! Looking forward to crossing paths with you in the future." And then many years later, this was a couple years ago, I was called in to audition for the revival, and getting to meet him and saying, "Oh, I don't know if you remember, I sent you this letter when I was a teenager or whatever, and saying that I played violin and hoping to work with you." And I don't know if he really remembered, but then getting to do the show, which is I sang. I remember I was like, I'm gonna take a big swing and maybe I'll miss, maybe I won't, but I sang "Being Alive" for him from Company, and I was like, this could strike out big because obviously he just had directed a revival of this, and maybe
Right.
he's not gonna like my take on it at all. But I did it, and that was, I think, the first round. And I was actually off to the next week to start rehearsals for a Teresa Rebeck play called The Bells in Delaware. And I believe it was the first, about a week later, we were in rehearsals, and I got the email that they wanted to see me for callbacks in New York. And on a break, I went to Teresa and I told her, and I was like, oh, they want to see me. John Doyle wants to see me for a callback for this revival of Pacific Overtures, but I would have to miss rehearsal next Monday or whatever to go down there. And she was so wonderful. And she was like, she just said, "Oh, you have to go. You're going to get it. You have to go." And I was like, "Oh, okay, thanks.
That was
Thanks,
easy.
Teresa." And with that vote of confidence, I went back to New York on the bus or whatever the next week, and with the sides and the song or whatever from the show, and yeah, and I got the part.
Oh,
And I
that's
got to
so
come
good.
back, and I got to tell her, "You were right. I booked it." And she was
You're
like, "See, I
right.
told you."
Lovely when it works out that way. And what was the experience working on that show? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Oh gosh, it was incredible. You mean Pacific Overtures, right?
Yes.
Yeah, The Bells was incredible too. Working with Teresa was incredible. Working with John Doyle, he is amazing, and he, hopefully I'm not quoting him out of turn, but when we were in rehearsal, it was just so much play. There was a lot of just exploration, letting us try things. He would have us try things, costumes, blocking, changing people who said what lines, and it was that sort of scaled down thing where 11 actors played 23 parts or however many are in the original full production. So
Right.
people were doubled up, and certain parts were consolidated. So there was a lot of exploration and play in the room. And I remember at one point, John said his favorite part of the show, like he wishes it could just be rehearsal forever and never actually have to stop and freeze to perform the show, because it's so much fun to be creating something with other artists in the room. So that was the sense of play that he brought into the rehearsal room. And it was just wonderful because each of us got to put our own stamps on our roles and the show, and guide where our characters went and how the script ultimately and the show came together under his guidance. That was really cool.
Oh, that sounds amazing. What an incredible
Hmm.
experience to have been a part of.
Yeah. And oh, and another thing of what makes that my favorite sort of booked it moment is, from a sort of practical standpoint, that was the beginning of going from being a regional out of town actor up the ladder to becoming somebody who's being seen in New York. Then after that, I did the show with the public and things, and friends, casting directors, other creatives, other people in the business could actually come see me as opposed to just seeing on social media, oh, I'm doing this show out somewhere else and not
Right.
actually see my work.
Oh, that's so cool. So cool. Thank you for sharing that. And
Yeah.
let's take a moment to talk about the present. What
hmm
projects are you working on now? What are you looking forward to? And, it's a crazy weird time. We are amidst this global
hmm
pandemic. How do you see the entertainment industry moving forward in the next couple of years?
Ooh, that's a big one. I'll start with the easier ones, which is what projects am I working on now? I was working on a couple of cool things before pandemic hit us. Like I said, the show that I did at the public, David Henry Huang's new musical Soft Power, hopefully has some traction. And I did another new musical in development called Shanghai Sonatas, which is a really cool piece that I got to be the lead role in for this presentation of it tells a story of a Chinese violinist who travels to Shanghai and stumbles across these magical violins which transport him back in time to Shanghai during World War II, when there was actually like an internment camp for Jewish people who had escaped from the Holocaust and were there in Shanghai, which is not a hugely known part of the Jewish Holocaust Chinese history, is that there was
Wow.
a number of Jewish musicians who sheltered in Shanghai during that time. So that's another piece that has some traction. And it's cool because I get to play violin in it. So I get to finally have that. The John Doyle, the Pacific Overtures piece actually ended up not having actor instrumentalists in it. We had a separate band. So I didn't get to fulfill that part of that dream. In Shanghai Sonatas, I do get to be an actor and an instrumentalist on stage
Oh,
in one
so
show.
cool.
Yeah, and I was doing a recurring role on a Netflix series, which I can't say more about, but that hopefully will be resuming at some point. And yeah, the other shows hopefully will be continuing as well. As of right now, I suppose I'm taking a cue from you as far as I don't know if this was the impetus for starting this podcast or if you had already had this in mind, but I was like, what kind of projects can I make on my own during this time? And I think I have a couple of ideas that are fledgling and I might start moving forward on. I really love food and cooking. And so I have this idea of doing a series of cooking videos of my mom's recipes, which are all in her head, which I think would be cool to put out there and preserve for myself, my family, but also other people who might want to see these sort of traditional Chinese recipes from the homeland. So that's an idea that I'm playing around with trying to get started. And then how do I see the entertainment industry moving forward in the next couple of years? That is a big question. I do not know when it's going to come back or how it's going to come back, but I will say that I hope that this pause and all of the social unrest that we've seen during this time with Black Lives Matter and everything gives the industry a chance to reset and move forward in that regard, as far as we are seeing some changes happening during this quarantine time, some changeover with artistic staff and diversity initiatives and policies as far as online programming and training and things. And I really hope that that continues and grows as the actual industry comes back in a live experience, that they will not begin to, but continue to tap into the world of diversity and representation.
Yeah. I feel like that's probably going to be happening though, and I would hope so. It's been past due, and I think this time is being good for that in the sense that we have the time to care or to give it attention
hmm
and focus,
Exactly.
which most things just get soundbited and they're on to the next thing. But we've actually have proper time now to really let these issues sink in and live with them for a second and try to put ourselves in other people's shoes. So now we can actually take steps forward and change things for the better.
hmm Yeah, that's
Yeah.
sort of been, I think, the double-edged sword about it. Because if it was just a short thing, then it would be too easy to gloss over and just go back to the way things were. But this is looking to be an extended period of time of of shutdown and reset. If one thing comes of it, I hope it's that it gives us enough time to implement some change coming back and moving forward.
Yes, we can only hope so. And it is time to move on to one of my favorite sections in the interview. I call it the Grease Lightning Round.
Ah,
I am going to ask you a handful of questions. I want you to answer them as quickly and concisely as possible, one after another. Are you ready?
sure.
All right, first question. What was the one thing holding you back from committing to a career as an entertainer?
Pressure from my family, from my culture, from myself.
Second question. What is the best piece of advice you have ever received?
Be yourself.
Oh, please, everybody. Third question. What is something that is working for you now? Or if you'd like to go pre-COVID, what was working for you before our industry went on pause?
Positive thinking and social media posting. Trying not to gossip or compare yourself to other people or be jealous of other people or post negative things. Keep it positive.
Yes. I love that you brought that up. I really appreciate that you brought that up about social media. And there's a lot of negativity that is thrown out there because, hey, it's easier for whatever reason for us human beings to throw out negativity than it is to throw out positivity and praise for things. And
hmm
on top of that, it is a weird time, right? We have a lot of time. So there's a lot of social media binging and checking it all out and just scrolling and scrolling on that never ending news feed. And there are great things that can come from all of that, but also going down the rabbit holes of, like you said, comparison and getting down on yourself because you're not doing something that you see other people doing. It's just silly and it's not helpful in the slightest for your well-being.
Exactly. It may feel good in the short term for whatever selfish kind of reasons, but ultimately it's wasted energy because the negativity doesn't do anything better for you. So it's better to try and adjust your mindset to think, how can I have something positive out of this that's going to help me move forward?
Absolutely. Absolutely agree. And you know what I've been doing the last, I would say 3 to 4 weeks, maybe three, closer to three, is I've gone on a dopamine detox. You can look all this stuff up on YouTube. And I'm very specific now, the last few weeks, with my social media usage, particularly. That also includes YouTube. If I'm ever on social media, it's never for entertainment purposes or for just scrolling to scroll. And if I'm watching YouTube, it's never for entertainment purposes. It's only for watching something that is educational or, is teaching me something that I'm interested in. And I gotta tell you, it's definitely hard, and you have those moments that you're like, oh, I just want to pick my phone up. But those moments and those urges are becoming less and less, and I'm finding more fulfillment and more joy in just staring at a white wall, or not having anything to do. So I find the joy in picking up my book that I've been meaning to read for a little while, or listening to that podcast, or going on that walk. It's amazing when you get out of your own way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would
That sounds
recommend
good.
it to anybody.
I should look that up.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And like I said, it's not fun for a second, but you start seeing the positives to it pretty quickly. It's pretty great. And let's move on to the fourth question. What is your best resource? Whether that is a book, a movie, a YouTube video, maybe a podcast, or a piece of technology that you found is helping your career right now.
Yeah, this is more of a general category, but there's a lot of like Zoom style Q&A things that are very informative that are happening right now. If you're a member of SAG, the SAG Foundation has these regular sort of Zoom Q&As with casting directors and leading actors and creatives that you can do. But if not, there's others like Actors Connection, which is an acting studio in New York, and I think they might have a branch in LA or something. They, during quarantine, have been having this thing called Free at 3, which I think on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 3 o'clock New York time. It's just like this open Zoom where they'll have casting directors or actors or whoever and like have an hour-long Q&A with them. And I tried to sit on a lot of these Zoom Q&As with leading people and gotten a lot of information out of them that I wouldn't normally have because you don't normally have access to all these minds. But because of quarantine, people are willing to share their information on Zoom in class format or free sort of seminar, webinar format. There's a lot of
Yeah.
them out there.
Yeah. It's such a great time right now to capitalize on all of this great information that's coming out because, like you said, a lot of these casting directors and actors, they don't have the time usually in their schedules to sit down and do a webinar or a seminar. It's just not part of, it's not an option. And right now, there's so much to learn if you want to learn.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Backstage, the Slate. Backstage also has a program called the Slate, and they do Q&As too.
Oh, perfect. And the fifth question: if you had to start your career from scratch, but you still had all the knowledge and experience you've collected from your career in this industry, what would you do or not do? Would you do anything differently or would you keep it the same?
Oh gosh. Oh, this one's so hard. If I had all the knowledge and experience that I've gained, but I could start it over again, I think I would skip the law school part.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I got to keep that knowledge and fortitude that I gained from having gone through being a pre-med and pre-law and going to law
Right,
school
of
and
course.
taking the bar and being a lawyer, those were some difficult years, man. Strenuous years. But yeah, and if I could have gone to theater school earlier and gotten a start in New York earlier, I think that would be helpful for where I am now. But at the same time, actually going through those experiences is what led me to who I am and where I am now. So yeah, if I didn't come through it with that same experience, then I would have to do it again.
Yeah, for sure. It is the conundrum of the question. And the last question: what is the golden nugget knowledge drop you've learned from your successful career in the industry that you would like to leave with our listeners?
Oh, I will repeat something which I hope he'll forgive me if I'm misquoting him, but at a birthday party or something, some event, when I first moved to New York, I met Titus Burgess in a social event, and I just found myself chatting with him and just like oh my gosh, I'm such a big fan of yours, 9 Broadway shows or whatever it was at that point, and
Yeah.
I saw you on the Tonys and Guys and Dolls, and you're amazing, and I'm so jealous of your career. I'm just moving here. I just graduated from theater school, and he put his hand on my hand and was like, no, don't be jealous of me. I'm jealous of you because you are getting to start here and you have your whole journey ahead of you. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. Like, and it goes to kind of what I was saying before, like, don't spend your energy comparing yourself to anybody else or being envious of anybody else or trying to be anything other than who you are. And that one piece, whatever the previous question was, where my answer was be yourself, right? I think the biggest golden nugget of information that I think actually a lot of people tell new people in New York, but is rarely sort of taken in, you kind of have to find it for yourself, is that idea of advice of being yourself, finding your own path, trusting that you have your own path. And it's really hard to tell somebody to do that. They just kind of have to learn that on their own. Yeah, you gotta find who you are and be yourself and know that your journey is for you.
Yes. That is insanely good advice and amazing how in that conversation he flipped the script on you, really, right?
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
it was just as profound and applicable to him. It's it's so good, and there's so much to be learned from that. So good. Thank you for
Yeah,
that.
and it took me, what, like probably I think I'm in my 10th or 11th year in New York now, and it probably took me, a good 10 years to actually have that sink in, even though I remember that quote always.
Hmm.
And I always thought about it, and I always sort of strived towards it, I think, in increments. It's only, after 10 years or so that I'm like, oh, I think I'm really understanding it on a level now. Because, you come out of school and, the girls all have their jewel tone dresses and their nude pumps, and the guys all have the vest and the audition shirt and the slacks or the jeans. And, you're sort of trained, especially in school, to like come to New York and be a certain way and do a certain thing and present a certain thing. And I feel like they don't really tell you, like, no, what makes you stand out is whatever is unique to you. Like, you have to come in the audition room, you have to approach your career with like, what makes me special about me, whether it's my personality or, what skill I have or this facet of myself that is unlike everybody else, not to come in the room and try and be cookie cutter, showcase graduate. Standing out and by being yourself is what allows people to say, oh, that's what kind of performer this person is, and I can use them in this way. And then you find your own path doing you, not trying to be your best version of what you think they want or what you think the show should have. Like, you should be your best you, then no one can be better than you at being you, and somebody will find a place for you.
For sure. So well said. So well said. And to wrap up this interview, Austin, it is time to give yourself a plug. Where can we find you? How do our listeners connect with you? Is there anything you want to promote?
Sure. My social media is at Secret Austin Man. It's a play on Secret Agent Man. My website is austinq.com. And yeah, like I mentioned, I've got some things in the works, hopefully coming soon, especially when pandemic ends. And maybe during pandemic, I might be doing some cool cooking videos. So hopefully those will start coming out soon, and I'm sure you'll see those on my social media.
Beautiful. And for everyone listening out there, I have put all the links that Austin just talked about in the description of this episode. Austin, thank you so much for taking your time to be on the show today. It's been a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you. It was fun.
Thank you so much for joining us today. My one call to action for you is to go to youbookeditpodcast.com and join our free email community, where we dig deep into a continually growing resource of truly actionable things you can be doing right now to help advance your entertainment career. Don't miss an episode. We have a new guest 7 days a week. Search for You Booked It on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app and subscribe today. All the best to you. We'll see you tomorrow.